I've been keeping a close eye on what's happening today with our good friends and extra milers in America with a hurricane. I've had word from a few of our friends of the show to say all's okay with them in their neighbourhoods, so I know that isn't the picture everywhere. So I'm wishing you, and if you're in the areas affected, or actually have family in those places or friends, all the very best for what's clearly going to be a challenging time with a clear up ahead. I looked at the BBC weather app first thing in the morning when I woke, because I wanted to see what was happening. And in the UK, the BBC app was properly helter-skelter, reporting strange weather patterns across the country. Wind speeds in my area approaching 15,000 miles an hour. So I think we could assume something is wrong at Auntie Towers. A few gremlins in the works. And we've had some gremlins in the works at Photo Walk Towers this week as well. Nothing quite like what's happening across the Atlantic, of course, but best laid plans and stuff. The show this week isn't quite as planned. A few things conspired to put some bits and bobs on hold over the coming weeks, which sounds more cryptic than it probably needs to. Some family bits, in essence. There was a French walking odyssey planned with our good friend of the show, Craig. I'd been talking... Did I talk about that? I'm sure I talked about that. Yes, you did, Neil. Thought I did. Well, anyway, that's now on hold. Not for long, I hope. I was actually due to make two trips to France in very quick succession, which I was thoroughly looking forward to. Only one of which I'll now be able to make. Plus, I didn't make London this week, the City Walk anyway, with Emily Renier that I'd publicised last week. Ems was due to be one of our guests today, actually my street photographer walking guest today, but due to, again, unforeseen circumstances, that too was postponed, hopefully only for a month. So apologies if you were looking forward to that. We'll be rescheduling, as the kids with a Z say. However, my other three guests who were featuring, they're still here. I have three. Yes, not one, not two, but three. Did you say three, Neil? Yes, three. What's that bird? Can you hear that? What's that? I'm sure the birds are more exotic. If only I could see you. That doesn't sound like something I'm used to. Not along this path, in Brimpton anyway. But yes, we have three guests. First guest, well, there's a new book coming out, a book project called Home, which is at the sort of crowdfunding stage, and it involves some work on the street for a man who, whilst he does shoot street, is usually more known, or at least recognised, for his beautiful work in woodland. It's our English friend, Davies, he of the trees, yes. But for this project, he's been walking around in the dark, sometimes at the dead of night, street shooting in his neighbourhood. But for a man who sleeps with the lights on, it brought about some interesting challenges. Then Valérie Jardin, our French-American friend, who hasn't been on for a couple of months. She's returning to talk about I'm going to use lowercase r for this, the rules of street photography. Because if there's a rule, it's there to be broken, isn't it? The candid nature of street photography. And she has some tips on how she goes about telling stories without drawing too much attention to you or your camera. And then from Germany, Wolfgang Strassl. Now, I was introduced to his work by a street photographer, a mentor, a portrait photographer, Gabriele Matola, whose work I'm very fond of. We've talked a good few times on the show together, and quite recently as well. So yes, Gabriele introduced me to this project, a street project called Underground Portraits, which Wolfgang made on his trips to London. It's subsequently become a book as well, which I will link to, of course. There's lots to see in the show notes today. Now, photographing on the underground in London is not exactly new. insofar as it's a familiar urban landscape to many a photographic study. But Wolfgang has found a way to approach it that I think is reasonably unique.
Today on the Photo Walk.
The challenge of capturing that moment that's never happened before and will never happen again. There's not a lot of photography genres that can give you that. And I think that's why we get so addicted.
If you really shove it to your face, glue it to your eyeball and really hold firm, you can get 1 to 2 seconds of a shot, even at that, at that speed without any blur.
I think it was still fascinating for me how much diversity and how many stories you would get basically in one carriage on the underground. And I found it was a fascinating picture of London.
If you're a street photographer, you do it for the experience first, the photograph second. If you're not enjoying the journey, you're going to be pretty miserable.
My 3 guests today in what I'd say is a very packed show, just like a 5 o'clock rush hour underground train pulling out of Oxford Circus on a Friday afternoon. We have Valérie, Mally, and to make the last name scan, I apologise, Wolfgang. I need to take a little artistic licence for a moment. Valérie Mally Wolfie. Hi to the people! That TV clip will make no sense to you at all unless you're of a certain age from the UK who remembers a certain TV show with that certain tagline for Wolfie Smith. Otherwise, as you were, we have your letters too, of course, and I'll take a peek into that mailbag in a moment for a flavour of those notes you've been sending in. But before that, I'd like you to know how truly thankful I am for those who've kept me walking with a microphone for over 4 years. Thank you to those who believe in the podcast enough that you are Patreon members or extra milers, as we know you by. And thank you to MPB, who sponsor this show. If you've been hearing their name but haven't tried them yet, then today is that day. MPB is a place where you can go to buy, sell and trade your used photo and video gear. They really do make gear more accessible and affordable. It's a very easy service to use. You just go online to mpb.com if you're in the States, the UK or Europe. And then at the top of the page, you click on Start Selling and Trading and follow the very, very simple instructions, which all leads to an instant quote, which if you're happy with, you accept, then you print off a label, stick it on a box with your gear in it, and a delivery driver will come and collect it from your front door. Once MPB receive and check, you get paid pronto into your account. You can, of course, buy camera gear too, and there's a huge amount to choose from because MPB recirculate 570,000 cameras, lenses and accessories a year. Or you can trade gear that you have for gear that you'd like. Buy, sell and trade used camera gear with MPB. I'll have a link on the show page today. On the show then, from your letters, Myles Barfield shares a story about legacy and how the simplest of pictures can be so effective. Plus, I share his book project that's become, I think, an autobiography. Complaints Corner seems to be active again. You'll never guess what showed up on a path that I've been blamed for, by Sarah. Chris Articulate is looking ahead for a more analogue way of sharing. I'm pretty sure Bill Marriott is going to help you feel and think very differently about what makes a truly expressive and emotive still picture. Harald Kahles has some ideas for specials, and Maureen Bond is thinking about her why of creativity. Lots to talk about, and shall we walk? Checklist out. Coffee, check. Garibaldi's, check. Walking boots, check. SD cards or a spare roll of film, check. And special night goggles, which will make more sense in a while. Let's walk. Now that autumn has arrived and winter's knocking on the door saying, "Can I come in?" No, not yet. You wait there. All in good time. There's plenty of time for you for the foreseeable, but just at the moment, just a bit more autumn, please. Maybe some sunshine here and there. And I'm walking along a familiar path. You've walked this path with me many times. Brimpton looks like a... it was closed for a while. Do you remember I said to you that there was a tree? It had come down, and for months it just lay there, stopping any cyclists. But it has been now chopped up, and I can see some cyclists have been along, and I think that's a horse hoof. Say that 5 times quickly in a row. Yeah, definitely. There we go. We'll make a detective of you yet, Neil. I'm not sure about that. But this path usually is one of those paths that I photograph with beautiful sun streaming through these very low canopies that are along the path, which I absolutely adore as sketchbook images. But today it's a blur sky. No Barney with me either today. It's just me and thee it is today. Let me get a sketchbook picture though. I suppose as the path wends its way or leads away from me, it falls into darkness. I mean, that might make an interesting picture. Let's see what we can do. So, ISO 160, 1/2/5, f4, and just a sketchbook picture to start the day's show where I'm walking. Now, you're an important part of this show with your letters and your thoughts. It gives our community a real uniqueness. Together we're finding this escapism and peace away from the noise of this world. And if you have a picture or two or a letter to send in, or you're gently enthused by anything that you hear today on the show, then send your letters, your stories, your pictures to the email address, which is stories@photowalk.show. Right, letters. Let's start with one from Myles Barfield. It's actually a letter and a book. And I'll start with a letter that came in with what you may think of when you see it on the show page as just simply a picture of a light bulb. But you know me, I am a sucker for simplicity, particularly when there's a very strong narrative or story attached to it. Simplicity can be the most powerful form of expression, and something that features in next week's show as a theme. Slight throw forward, as they say in the biz. So this picture from Myles, which will be on the show page today, is of a light bulb, really, in the corner of a room where the ceiling, it's a curved one, dissects with a wall, and a very distinct kind of wallpaper from memory now. I put it on the show page. That was wallpaper, wasn't it, Myles? You'll see it on the show page. Let me read you his thoughts, his words. Hello, Neil. This may look simple, this picture, but there's actually a very emotional, deep within sentiment behind it. Reflecting on the impending demolition of this old building that played such a pivotal role in my youth, I recently revisited La Grande Opera House in Childress in Texas, where I spent countless hours exploring. Constructed in 1911, this historic building has undergone numerous transformations, yet traces of its past persist through each change. Oh, hang on a moment. Could this have been a picture that was... I'm not sure. I thought for a moment maybe this was supposed to be for the assignment this month. But anyway, I'll read on. For many, the significance may be elusive, but to me, this single image of the uppermost ceiling symbolizes enduring legacy. Here, the original craftsmanship is visible alongside later renovations, even as the structure's integrity shows signs of decline. Its original name, a French term meaning the great, resonates deeply, evoking the joy my grandfather experienced when he first became part of its history. These memories linger in my heart, subtly capturing the essence of the Opera House and its quiet grandeur. Now, Myles, thank you for the picture. Oh, fantastic. And yes, very potent thoughts. This is why photography can be so special, isn't it? This is why it opens our eyes and consciousnesses in a way that I think I genuinely mean this, that very few other things can. Even reading to an extent. Photography is not just this, as I often call it, this passport to curiosity. In this case, and you proved it with your picture, it's, and your words, it's a time-travelling machine, isn't it? And whilst I know there's a melancholic edge to a building disappearing that was a real part of your family, quite clearly, you've made a very special, simple legacy picture, which will be on the show page today. Very drawn to that. But also, thank you for sending your book to me from the States, which arrived around about a week ago. The book is called In My View. It's a first volume of work, and it's very appropriate today, actually, what we're talking about Mally's involvement in a book project very shortly. It's the book that Myles has sent me is this personal walk through nature and this wonderful world in which we live, this beautiful world that despite and in spite of what nature has in store for us, it is, and I don't use this word flippantly, as you well know, it is awesome, frankly awesome. So thank you for the book. It's, I can tell this is like a lifetime's work. Every page, along with the picture you've made, has a story about the place that you're in, you're photographing, both physically and mentally. It's an outstanding project. It really is. And look at these titles for the pictures. And your personal accounts of what photography means to you. Threads of Dissonance, Echoes of Resilience, Night Song, Vigilant Shore. Really, I do feel very, very honoured, very privileged to have received this gift from you, and it's such a personal book and account as well. Now, I know you're a man of faith, and much of that faith is reflected within the book by accompanying lines of scripture, but whether that is, if you're a reader, whether that is or not your own chosen path of belief, I think if you were to read this book, it would be like reading Myles's autobiography in pictures and in words. So if you'll indulge me, I'm going to cross back to my studio self as I would like to read some of the words from the opening of the book, the inside cover where you explain the why of this project and what photography means to you. It would, of course, be much, much better in your voice, but in that I don't have that right now, I hope you don't mind borrowing my voice, if only for a few moments. This is the work of Myles Barfield.
Photography has become my sanctuary, a means through which I connect with the world, a task that's often eluded me. Despite the subtle changes in my voice over the years, my core mission has remained the same: to grow. I'm dedicated to letting go of the limitations that restrain me, recognizing and realizing the thoughts and behaviors that emerge as obstacles in my path and holding on to what grounds me. Although my initial aim was to capture grand, breathtaking scenes, my focus has shifted towards capturing the emotions, reflections, and contemplations that crystallize in my mind as each image takes shape. It's the fusion of narrative and imagery that I wish to share. The photographs not only complement the stories, but also unveil the contemplation within each image. This book is not an attempt to impose my views or to burden the reader with them. It represents the honest reflections of a soul in search of alignment between personal insights and visual expression. If this work helps you glean insights to aid your own journey, then I've achieved my greatest goal. Moreover, I pen these words for my daughters, leaving a part of myself with them throughout their lives. This is an echo of their father's voice, ensuring that I remain with them in spirit long after my departure. Please understand that what's written here may not fully capture who I am, but rather embodies who I aspire to be.
And my thanks to Myles Barfield for your story of the lamp, as I'm calling it, and your beautiful Volume 1 book of your life called In My View. It does have an ISBN, so I shall leave a link on the show page today. I actually have a couple of books that I've been sent of late, a few to thank for. Stand by, as they say, if you sent something in. The books and my thoughts will follow forthwith, he says, sounding very formal. Right, let me do another picture. Let's put your letters down, your letters and thoughts. There's somebody in the background hooting, just going beep, 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 like Morse code. Quiet, quieten down. Thank you. Unnecessary. Right. Oh, look. There he goes again. Just holding on to his horn. Just, that sounds to me like somebody, I mean, the road's quite a way away. That's somebody like, oh, you've pulled out, you're in front of me. I'm one space back in the queue. Of course, I don't really know what's going on. Don't know the story, so. Right. Oh, hang on. Peaked early there. 125th, F4, 640 ISO. Shooting through, well, I suppose there's a bit of a kind of barrel going on there, whereas I shoot along the path, a bit like when you look at one of those wonderful surfing shots where you look down you look along the water and you see that, is it called barreling? Oh, I should talk to one of my surfing photographer friends. I can hear them shouting at me now. When you look along, is it the pipe? You look along and you see the wave folding over. It's a little bit like what's along this path. All right, pick up your letters. Last week's Complaints Corner has created a monster. Well, maybe not a monster. Maybe one of those buzzy gnat things that you swipe at that loop around your fingers and laugh at you like a tiny macro display team. Ugh, get away. Oh, whoosh. But a few complaints have come shooshing in off the back of what may or may not become a featurette. And this one is from our Sarah Moorcroft, who sent in a picture with a sort of complaint, I guess. Now, I need to join some dots for you at this stage because I'm always aware that we have people that join us, photographers that join us, walkers that join us constantly. And you I never want you to feel like it's an exclusive club where you can't understand what could be considered in-jokes. So I drag behind me what I loosely term the sofa of flattery. It's like my Dickensian chain link from A Christmas Carol. So I drag around this sofa of flattery, and I metaphorically hide behind it when your letters flatter me in such a way that my Englishness really needs to resort to self-deprecation, which is often a fine line between "shh, you're embarrassing me" and "go on, tell me more," as I'm secretly enjoying it. Usually it's the former though, because being English, I don't handle flattery very well at all. It's ingrained. It's actually it's a class that we take. It's part of the education syllabus. But anyway, so I have this metaphorical sofa that I drag around to hide behind when flattery threatens to bring out a red rash on my neck. But it seems it may not be so metaphorical, because Sarah Moorcroft has gone and found a sofa on the path. Well, not so much on the path, actually. "Dear Mr. James," says Sarah, "there's been a further complaint to the council this week that your sofa's once again been found on a beach. Please could you collect it at your earliest convenience? I couldn't resist sending you this photo taken near to the Butt of Lewis, Outer Hebrides, last year. Is it your sofa on this rocky outlet?" And you're right, Sarah. What the F-stop is that? I mean, go to the show page and you'll see it, but how on earth did somebody manage to lug a whole sofa to the edge of a rocky outlet next to the coast in what looks like possibly the middle of nowhere? I mean, you'd either have to employ a team of friends that believe it's some kind of good idea, or you've got superhuman personal strength. Parking the debate of illegal trash for a moment, although actually this looks like a pretty good quality sofa, why would you dump it there? Why would you put it there? I mean, it's the ultimate seat to view the ocean. It's not like one of those wooden seats that you find with a plaque on it. No, this is a full-blown, very puffy, very comfortable-looking sofa, leather sofa. But no, it's not my sofa of flattery. Actually, no, it's blue for starters. My sofa of flattery is actually red. Maybe somebody else has a sofa of flattery that they're lugging around with them. So picture is on the show page. If you recognise this as your sofa, please go and collect as soon as you possibly can. Sarah will be very happy. Right, change of speed, change of direction. This week's first guest of three. Three what I might call over-a-coffee conversations on this sort of street-focused week. Well, as far as the guests are concerned, at any rate. There's a book coming out which features a good friend of ours, Davies. let me explain the book, because actually the conversation, as you're about to hear, sort of meanders like somebody who looks lost wandering around in a modern art gallery. The book is called Home, and it's a collaborative project between 3 photographers, 2 writers and 2 bookmakers as well. So it's quite the collaboration. It showcases 38 striking black and white colour images from photographers Alex Vescher, Mally Davies and Mick Houghton. Now, these images are accompanied by deeply personal reflections from an author called Jeff Young, who is based in Liverpool. And he writes for stage and radio and telly, film, poetry, all sorts of things. Very, very talented man. And there's a foreword by the Children's Laureate, Frank Cottrell Boyce. All proceeds from the book are being donated. I say all proceeds, all profits from the book will be donated to the Paper Cup Project, a Liverpool-based charity dedicated to supporting individuals experiencing homelessness. So it's clearly for a very good cause. And the book, well, there was a brief, and it was to make pictures in and about what home means to you, which is a running theme of conversation in this show, isn't it? Because I often moot that photographic magic is so very often on our doorstep, or at least very close to it. So here's my conversation, my chat with Mally Davies, who I find out is more alike with some of my quirks than I knew prior to our conversation, as you're about to find out.
Oh, Mally, you've been a bit of a dark horse. You've been working on this project. I think you did mention it to me. So to be fair, I'd heard about it. Then I must have at some point parked it, in the same way that I park a lot of the stuff that Sam, my wife, says to me. And then she said, I did tell you about it about a year ago. And I'll say, it
was a bit like that, yeah.
I'll say, I do know. I remember, whilst I'm desperately sort of like a duck swimming furiously with my paddles under the water thinking, come on, bring it back to me. What did she say? What did she say? But this is a project called Home. It's a book you've been working on, and you've been working with 2 other photographers.
It's a collaboration, so it's not my book.
No.
I what would be the word? Applied or got shortlisted to be one of the photographers providing images for this collaborative book project to raise money for a very good cause, and also to put me through it because it was difficult. And in the darkness, as you talk about, I did for quite a few nights spend time with a rather expensive camera in the darkness. But we'll go into that more, won't we?
Well, okay, so the project, the book, is Home, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, I've worked on a home project myself.
Yeah.
Although I didn't make the pictures for it, if I had have been making the pictures for it, I most probably would not be talking to you now, because I'd be up on another level, because it was Magnum. It was Magnum's home project, and I did a few films for the project, including working with Mark Power.
Can I just interrupt there? When you told me that, it took me about 5 minutes to think, he did films for Magnum. Ladies and gentlemen, he doesn't tell anyone this stuff, and then all of a sudden you'll just be sat talking with Neil and say, oh yeah, I had a few drinks with Prince Charles, or just something, you know. I made a few films for Magnum, you know.
This is the book. I'm showing it here. I know my other listener can't see it because this is an audio experience, but this is the book, and I didn't make the book. Obviously, this is Magnum's book, but I worked with 2 of the photographers in there to produce a retrospect, a piece about their work. Olivia Arthur was one of them, and Mark Power was the other one, and essentially they made pictures around their home. It was for some of them it was in their home. For Olivia Arthur it was, and for Mark it was a lot of pictures around Brighton, which is where he lives. I'll just put that tome of a book over there. But it's a wonderful project. So when you said home, I thought, I remembered instantly, I thought, what about that home project that Magnum did? It's a wonderful idea to photograph close to your home. And we constantly talk about this, that photographs are on your doorstep.
Yeah, and for me, it's been a big component of my photography for a very, very long time. Places like Johnny's Woods and Billinge and local areas of woodland, especially woodland for me. But then to shoot urban, to be in amongst the closer areas to home was a real challenge. You know, when you just said, I wish I'd have took some images at home as well. Didn't think about that. I went straight out the door and straight onto the streets and started photographing. And that challenge took place because as you know, I work full time. And when this project took place, it was in the dark nights of winter, you know, getting up to Christmas time and going out shooting sometimes in the dead of the night. Nikon won't be happy, though. So I was fortunate to have been loaned a Nikon ZF, and I took this out with me in the middle of the night, shooting with a 1.8 50mm, and it was a lot of fun. It did take me back to a time of what used to be the Polytechnic University at Salford University, where I was given a role of Ilford and go and shoot
HP5 or
it would have been HP5, I reckon. Would it have been 400?
Would it have been Delta? Maybe they gave you Delta 3200.
It might have been Delta. The thing is, it could have been anything because we used to just pull them off spools and cut it ourselves. And
did you? You were self-rolling.
Yeah, so we used to just pull the film. You go in and get. Do you want to get a few? Do you all know how to call like 3 rolls of
Is
film?
that a 36 roll film or is that a 50? A 52? Since when have they made 52?
Sometimes it didn't fit in the canister. I'm like, And I loved that time, but it was very technical and very demanding. A brief to do something that someone else was asking you to do. Where photography for me, I'd say since leaving university, has been doing what I like, shooting. From 2012 when I really got into it, was more about I could do what I wanted. So the home project took me back to those restrictions, if you like, the idea of working to a brief and produce images that weren't always in my comfort zone.
No. I want to roll it back a bit so the whole thing makes sense. You've worked with 2 bookmakers that we've talked about before because of their association with a project called Literal. Tell me about those 2, because you entered a process because essentially you had to apply to take part in producing pictures for this book.
Yes, so the 2 gentlemen who were talking about, Paul and John, had put out a post, and I have to blame our good friend Lynn Fraser here, because Lynn was a part of the project Literal.
Oh, yes.
And I had bought a copy of that book. It's beautifully made, beautifully printed, a fantastic book to have on your shelf.
Yeah.
Then Lynn said, have you seen Paul and John have put a call out for photographers? I think you should do it. So it's Lynn's fault. I never do these things. So on this occasion, I thought, do you know what? I'm going to apply. And then I forgot all about it. I thought, and then Lynn said to me, have you heard anything? I said, I completely forgot about it. Funnily enough, about a day or 2 after, I got an email saying I'd been accepted to work on the project, which was very exciting. Something very different for me to do, to work with people, a collaboration to create a book. The other thing is, and I say this in my podcast, to be published is a privilege.
The project itself didn't have to be shot in the dark, but a lot of it was shot in the dark. You have a full-time job during the week as a traffic warden, I know that.
Ice cream man.
No, you're a designer during the week, so you have a 9 to 5. Or 9 to 7 or 9 to 8. Is there such a thing as a 9 to 5 these days? So you elected to go and make these photographs at night. Are you afraid of the dark?
Do you know I do sleep with the light on the landing?
Do you?
And I never shut the door. I always leave it ajar.
I'll share this with you then. When I stay a lot in Premier Inns in the UK. Now for our wonderful other listener who's wearing maybe, I don't know, Stetson or other countries are available, you won't necessarily know the Premier Inn. We call it the Purple Palace in this country because it's loosely based on the colour purple. Their bathrooms, if you sleep in the older hotels, they don't have the fan. They don't have the fan because usually you turn it on. I can't sleep like that and I always just crack open the door slightly and let the light into the room.
Yeah,
I can't sleep in the dark either.
That's quite uncanny and similar. I call them a Lenny Henry. So whenever we stay in a Lenny Henry, I always have to find the switch for the fan for the bathroom because you have to put the bathroom light on and leave it open ajar a little bit.
So
depending which hotel as well, sometimes you have to put the shaver light on. Just a little bit of light coming through. Can't believe that.
We're more alike than we like to think. So I'm going to ask the question again then. Are you afraid of the dark? Because you made a lot of these pictures in the dead of night with your camera and you were wandering through underpasses. The stuff that you have in the book is essentially Mali in the dark.
It is. I'm not afraid of the dark in that sense. Going round the streets at night, you'd be surprised just how peaceful it is because people are all thinking the same, I'm not going under that underpass, with all that graffiti and all them druggies knocking about and all these bad people and, they all come out at night. I didn't see anyone. It was so peaceful. I walked around my hometown, St Helens and local area where I live, and unknown, on my own, no one, nothing, and just availability to just compose, find shots and actually think differently. A couple of shots in the book are of privets lit by street lights, and those two I quite like. They're very different and they suggest things as well. So there's a bit of psychology going on, and I never do that in my photography. So shooting at night was really, really hard because I'm shooting wide open, 1.8, 1.8, f1.8, ISO 1000 up sometimes, looking for light. Because when you shoot, as everyone knows, when you have ISO and you shoot into the light or with the light, the quality improves, the noise drops off, but you still get that lovely depth and darkness to the image without too much noise. So you're not completely dark. And that's what I was looking for, was pockets of light, pockets of interest. And it was a real challenge, I have to say.
The pictures that you've made for this project, now I can't say that I've seen them all, and I have to pre-order the book, obviously, to see what's in the book. But I know of some of the work that you've been making because I know you personally, and so sometimes we share ideas. But your ideas, your work reminds me, in some respects, of a conversation I had with a photographer called Simon Buckley, who works out of Manchester, and he had a project called come on, memory, Not Quite Light. That was it, Not Quite Light. Which is nighttime shots, almost light, but not quite.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of that. It's a different feeling about nighttime photography. If I were brave enough, I would love to wander the canal close to where I live. You know it because we've walked it.
Yeah.
And I would love to walk, because I bet it, not necessarily in the dead of night, but I bet that place is a very different photographic experience in the dark.
Yeah, I agree. I'd love to do more of it, actually. And I'll go back to my courting years. I'll just add this bit quick. When I first started courting,
do we need this bit?
Dating. Well, I used to walk a 3.5 mile walk home every night. After I'd walk her home and I'd walk back. It's about 3 miles. Yeah. And I'd always think, do I walk down the road or do I cut through the forest, the woods and the woodland path? And I'd always go, I'll cut through the woodland path, because the thing is about bad people, if you're really, really a bad person, you want to hurt someone, they're probably more frightened of me coming out the dark. And I remember this one time walking under the underpass, pitch black, and I mean solid black, and I had headphones on and I was listening to Jimi Hendrix all along the Watchtower. I clearly remember it. I'm really being into it and the whole feeling and not being frightened at all, and a jogger run past me, but I didn't know the jogger was on top of me, like running past me, until they were right there because I had headphones on. And I leapt into the air and let out this big screech, and the jogger bolted. I sprinted off. My heart was pumping, and I'll never forget that. So, yeah, shooting in the dark is I think, isn't as bad and as scary as we probably think, but very challenging.
Okay, so how do you rethink the way that you shoot? Because you're used to, I mean, a lot of your images these days that you particularly like are the very high key black and white ones of the trees. I know you love that material, but that's not done in the dead of night. How did you have to rethink the way that you shoot? And for fear of getting a nosebleed, you can go a bit technical as well.
Oh, well, the technicality on it was, how do I get things sharp? And then, do I need to get them sharp? Do I want the atmosphere? Because I did quite a bit of movement as well, and streets with cars, the lights streaking. So, you know, like, what, 30th of a second was enough to have blur of cars moving, and then the lights blurring and leaving the light trails behind, and the cars have gone. So I used light to my advantage on a few of the shots, where there's a shot I have a bus shelter and the cars had passed and they'd lit the road and they'd lit the bus shelter, but the cars are not in the shot, just the remaining light. From, I think I was handheld at 1/8 of a second.
Because that picture looks like you've set up speed lights left and right of the bus shelter, but you haven't. That is the headlight from a car, isn't it?
Yeah,
as you say.
But the thing is, this is one of the things. Even though it was to a briefing, it was difficult and it was challenging. I love to experiment. So I was quite in my element, walking around in a situation that I'm not used to, the dead of the night, looking for pockets of light, shooting f1.8, ISO 1000 up, and just playing around with movement, and even trying to get the ISO very, very low and very, very like close to probably shooting handheld speeds, like I say, 1/15 of a second, that kind of thing, handheld. With modern technology these days, if you really shove it to your face, glue it to your eyeball, and really hold firm, you can get 1 to 2 seconds of a shot, even at that, you know, at that speed, without any blur, motion blur. But I think the search for light and the search for atmosphere and mood and the psychology of it, I think a lot of these, I've said this a lot, I think, because it was a lot of thought. You know, sometimes you go out and you experience the landscape with the aesthetics, the beauty, what the sun and light gives you in the landscape, light on the land, all that business. But shooting in the dark was a real thoughtful process.
You might not have done this project because it takes you outside your comfort zone, physically and mentally, actually, on this particular occasion, to produce work for a collaborative book project that you would otherwise have not thought of shooting.
I'd like to think all of us, the three of us, Alex Welsh and Mick Horton, and Jeff Young, the writer, as well, because it's not just about the
Jeff wrote some words for it, didn't he? Yeah.
Jeff wrote a whole expression, almost dreamlike words to accompany all of the images. Quite odd that Jeff wasn't with me, but his words almost represent the thoughts.
Do they?
Yeah.
Wow.
In some situations, he's actually wrote as if he was walking with me. That's some talent. Very talented man indeed. I'm looking forward to meeting Jeff, I hope soon. But his words that accompany the project are a big part of it.
I think you said it all in that you said, I'm looking forward to meeting him, yet he's written words that go with your images in a book as if he was standing over your shoulder. And you've not even met the man yet. Which makes that quite an interesting collaboration, especially so, doesn't it?
For me, that's been a big part of this that's made it a very worthwhile collaboration, is when I saw Jeff's words, because I do love writing poetry. I do love expressive writing myself. I really do get into quite a bit of that. People might not know that about me, but I do like to read.
I like a bit of poetry as well. One of my favourites is Milligan. Have you?
I don't believe you.
Okay.
I was building up then to say,
Right.
I was getting all like profound, and I was just going to say my favourite poet was Spike Milligan.
Is it this one? I must go down to the sea again. The lonely sea in the sky. I left my vest and pants there. I wonder if they're dry.
Just amazing.
That's one of
Absolutely
my favourites.
amazing. I can't believe that.
Oh, Mally. Do you know, if it weren't for Dawn and Sam, we should have got married. All that remains to be said is that Home as a Book is a project I will leave a link to on the show page today. It needs purchasing. It's for a charity as well. I think all proceeds are going to all the profits are going
all of it,
to the charity, which is good. But to get the book printed, as is the way these days of many photo books, it has to have pre-sale for it to be a project that goes somewhere. So I will leave a link, and hopefully, I'm laughing because of Milligan, not because of anything else. But hopefully you'll be able to make this project come to fruition. Go on then. Have you got a favourite? Let's end with a favourite Milligan. Have you got a favourite Milligan, or have I just done it? Have I just done it?
No, my brain's like I can't retain a hold. I can go and get the books.
Oh dear.
But no, I don't have a.
What did Milligan say on his? I remember what he said on his tombstone. Do you remember what he said on his tombstone?
I told them I was ill. I said I was ill.
I told them I was ill.
Just amazing. The Plank is one of my favourite films as well. I know that's not Milligan, but that era of Harry Seacombe and his name's gone, Tommy Cooper. But what was the tall guy out the Plank? Sykes, Eric Sykes.
Eric Sykes, yeah.
We're talking quality comedy.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
We're talking quality comedy in terms of people of a certain generation in the UK.
Yeah,
Otherwise, right now you're thinking, what on earth are they talking about?
Well, for bringing back to the Home book, I'd just like to say this. None of us are making any we're not getting paid. We've all give our time freely to help raise money for a charity. So this book is a privilege to be published, to be involved and to be published and printed. And everyone should try and get the photography published and printed. I've made my own books, and I've got to say, making books and making my own book is quite a special thing to do.
And I love in that circular fashion of conversation, I love what Mally said there, so applicable to my opening letter today from Myles Barfield. Make books, be involved with books. Consider that your receptacle of legacy. I was quite pleased with that. I noted that down. Can you use that as a writing term? Sounds a bit like kitchen talk to me, Neil. Does it? Receptacle of legacy? I think it's quite good. Note to self, consideration for a future show title about food photography. Which is funny that you should mention that, Neil. Why is that? Well, because next week on the show, my guest is Henry Hargreaves, who is, IMHO, one of the most inventive, creative, artistic photographers when it comes to food and stories about food. Although I do have a title in mind already for his show, so I can save that one for another time. He is the photographer who did the last meal request pictures of those in American jails. A grim topic, perhaps, but one that, as we'll find out, has opened a whole conversation about all manner of connected topics across the world, actually, wherever these pictures are exhibited. And there are parts of Europe where this has really garnered much attention. I had so much fun talking with Henry, and I came away with so much energy from the conversation I had with him, and I'm hoping that will rather rub off on you as well next week, because that's my guest. He's my guest next week on the Photo Walk Show. All right. News of Scotland. Week 1 is now full. So, yes, we've had to open up the second week. When I say had to, I'm delighted to. I run this with my good friend Lynn Fraser, an extra miler and very much adventurer. And each year we've been sure to retain what I think is a wonderful spirit of these weeks, whilst just working in some new ideas and places to experience, because so often photographers return for another week. So if you don't mind, I'd like to repeat something I mentioned last week, that this year one of our returning photo walkers actually suggested. It's a word that she felt really summed up the emotion, the tone and the essence of the week in Scotland. And the word that she said to me was senses. Judith McDermott said that, and thank you for it, Judith, because a light bulb flickered. Not one of those LED ones without soul, no, not that kind of light bulb, but one of those warm tungsten ones that emit that beautiful light, flickery light that tiny pubs in small villages have in the dead of winter, where you think, oh, there we go, there's refuge. So yes, it was a revelatory moment, so it was. And so that's what we're now going to call the Scottish retreats. Senses. In 2025, which isn't so far away now, in September, we'll continue with the popular parts of the week, like the loch visits that we make, our walks along the Black Water, which remains one of my favourite places in the world, through the beautiful woodland that it has, and alongside the torrent of the river that runs down that part of the glen. Is it the glen there? Lynn's looking at me. I could see you, Lynn, over your glasses there, saying, come on, get the words right, Neil. And we're going to be engaging all of our senses on this retreat. We're going to do a further creative writing experience through forest bathing with our thoughts. There'll be a new sound workshop to discover how our pictures and sound can work together. Plus, we're going to talk about how to bring our photography onto a more tactile plane as we discuss and share ideas and thoughts about bookmaking and zine production. It's something I'm going to be spending my time doing a lot more this year. I already do it, to be fair, as a wedding photographer for many years. Making books, making zines, making prints to go in boxes is something I've not really considered. It's something that I have a great amount of experience in, but I actually do. So we'll be talking about that. We stay in a wonderful part of the Highlands of Scotland, on the Black Isle near Inverness. It's far enough away to make this a true retreat, but close enough to rail and road and flight links to be very convenient for those arriving for the retreat. The barn has private bedrooms. There's a wonderful nightly meal prepared for us, with an opportunity to share and talk about our work and experiences and prepare ourselves for the day ahead. So thank you for those so far who've been on this retreat and been a part of what I'm now calling Senses. And I'm thoroughly looking forward to welcoming you if you're coming in September 2025. All right, shall we share some postcards? Yes, Neil, let's do that. I'm glad you said that. Otherwise, the next few moments would have been awkward silence. I'll share the pictures on the show page today. There's plenty to see, actually. A good few links, too. So, actually, this is one postcard and some words. Or rather, food for thought, if you will, that I think you might enjoy. First up, Cool Name Award going to Chris Articulate. Oh, Chris. A brilliant name, though I don't know why I thought of this when I noted your name down. The first thing that came to mind would have been that isn't it funny how memory and the mind works, or recall of things work? Because the first thing I thought about with your surname, Chris, was how articulate having the letter A would have put you right at the first in line for the school doctor whenever vaccinations were being done, like the dreaded BCG jab. I don't know whether you have that in your part of the world. You're in Australia, aren't you? Yes. But certainly in the UK, the BCG was, oh no, BCG week. God, did we work up to that week, really? And I got worked up. But I wasn't at the front of that queue. You would have been. Sorry, sir, can't we start with the letter Z? We always start with A. Can we start with surnames that start with Z this time? Dear Neil, says Chris, it's been a few years since I last wrote, but I remain a regular listener. Thank you for all the company and inspiration you and your guests provide. And, thank you, Chris. It always scares me a bit. And here's some imposter syndrome, first-class imposter syndrome, that one day you'll all say, do you know what, Neil? Thanks very much. We're off now. We're going to go and listen to somebody else instead, because it would be just me and Barkalot, wouldn't it? And Barkalot's not even here today. So it would be a very lonely photo walk. I was just listening to episode 445, says Chris, when you mentioned the Miami lifeguard huts. Do you know Tommy Quack's work? Kwak, that is. He's done a beautiful job documenting those huts, which is the only way I know of them. And he's left me a link for a feature on creative booms. So rather than read you a long link, I will pop that on the show page today. You also kind of asked for holiday postcards. So I thought I'd include 2 images I made on a recent holiday, which is July. I realise this has taken a few weeks to read out. It's been winter here in Australia and the mood is cold. I recruited my children to help me with a new capital P project that these 2 images will be a part of. It's going to be about bringing our digital lives out into the offline world, which I assume will be prints and books. We're back on that, aren't we? It's early days, but I do love a project, and so do I, Chris. I hope you enjoy the rest of the summer, though... as you found out by me saying it's autumn now, we're heading quite briskly in every way, shape and form towards winter. But I do hope you'll keep doing the show for at least another 20 years. I shall do my best. Anyway, pictures will be on the show page today, and I do love the mysterious fog in the first picture that you have in particular. Fantastic. And then this letter from our friend Bill Marriott. Hi, Neil. Greetings from North Carolina in the colonies, which I'm not so sure you're supposed to say. We can't call it that these days. You'll get us in trouble. I came across this great quote about photography in the book of short stories that I'm reading. It's A Table for Two by Amor Towles. I think it's Towles or Tolles. It resonates with me, and I thought perhaps you and your other listener might find it useful. I will certainly leave a link on the show page, Bill, to this book. So from Bill, this is what he spied. A very good reason, I think, to go in search of this book. Most people outside of Hollywood don't understand what it takes to shoot a good still. Most people in Hollywood don't understand. The name they give it shows how little they understand, because a good still is anything but. It has to have motion. It has to give a sense of the action that's simmering under the surface. Like the fight about to break out in a saloon or the romance about to be kindled under a street lamp. A good still has to communicate a mood. It has to reveal the psychology of the characters. It has to intrigue and entice. And to achieve all of that, the still photographer has to have the aesthetic sensibility of a set designer, the eye of a cinematographer, and the persuasive talents of a director. Blimey, Bill, I love that. I love the words from Amor. I mean, Amor had me at the word most, I think. That's truly incredible. I am primarily, says Bill, a street photographer, and I'm trying to develop skills as a visual storyteller. But this quote highlights some of the things that I need to aspire to when taking pictures. I almost feel like I should type this out and keep it in my account. Type it out, Neil, type it. Yes, type it. I've got the typewriter at the back of the studio. I feel like this is the sort of thing, the important thing that you need to take your time over. So but I definitely want to have these words in my camera bag. I really think that's something I'd like to reference. Stay well, Neil, and keep up the wonderful work you're doing to grow the Photo Walk community of kindness. Well, it's not a single person's job. But I'm glad you remind me, Bill, to ask you, if you're listening right now, if you wouldn't mind sharing this show. It, as I said last week, I think I said this last week, why is that plane buzzing me, Bill? Hey? Go on. See, this is the trouble when you come out just a little bit later to do the photo walk. All the pilots have come out. Go on, make your finals. That way, over there. Well done. Don't start circling. I'm talking to Bill anyway. But yes, if you can help me by sharing the show, that's greatly appreciated. And you can do that in two ways. You can either share it by the handy buttons on each show page when you're logged into things like Facebook or WhatsApp or whatever, or you can just remember photowalk.show and remind those that you're in a Facebook group with, or send an email to a friend and help stop this being the best kept secret. But Bill, I am, with what you sent in, I'm also looking forward very much to spending time in India with you next year. I sense we will have much to think about given those paragraphs. So then to my second chat today, this time with Valérie Jardin, who thanks to our specials and Scottish Wheat last month, took a short sabbatical from her regular appearance, but she's back today to talk street. Now, I might have suggested earlier that rules should have a lowercase r, and I do stand by that because, frankly, as photographers, they're the things that we're so desperately, we happily try stroke intend to break. But there are certainly ways to engage when photographing on the street candidly, and that is what this chat is about. Here's Valérie Jardin.
Valérie, some printing news before we start to chat. You, the project you've been working on with your, I never know what they're help me
Centenarians. Centenarians.
Oh,
people
dear.
of 100 years or more are centenarians. Yes,
I know. I know what I'm trying to say. It was just not coming out of my mouth. But it's in a book. It's in a book.
Yes, the book is in pre-sale right now as of this morning. So it will be launched mid-November for the big exhibit and artist talk here in Minneapolis. So I'm taking pre-orders, US only for the physical book this year. It's so hard to have to deal with custom taxes and everything that I decided to keep it simple. It's also available as a beautiful ebook. And so, yes, all pre-orders on my website for the physical book when it's available.
Well, good luck with it. That doesn't mean, though, that the project's finished, because I thought...
No, part one.
Yeah, because you've got many people to photograph and stories to tell yet on that project, haven't you?
Yes, I met a lot of 99-year-olds this year, so I'm going to photograph them next year. And so this was part one. I will definitely continue the project. It was such a beautiful thing, and I learned so much, so I want to continue. Absolutely.
I'm not sure whether this is the PC thing to say, but they're maturing nicely into your project, which makes them sound like...
Yes, they're getting riper by the minute.
So should we edit that out? No, we'll leave that in. Right, today, the rules of street. We've been talking, actually, for quite a while now, once a month, and I thought, let's revisit something that we haven't spoken about for quite a while. We touch on points about street shooting all the time, I know, inevitably, but I thought let's do something particular about street photography. We have new audience members joining us all the time, so this will be a refresher for some and completely fresh for others. First of all, I'm going to rewind all the way back and ask you what drew you to street photography and the candid nature of it in the first place.
Well, the challenge of it, and I love people. I love mysteries. I'm very curious by nature. And as a kid, I would always peek and through people's window at night. You know, you'd be driving. I have these memories so vivid as a child. We would be driving through a town or a village at night, and lights would be on, and from the back seat, I could peek into moments of everyday life and make up stories. And I did become a street photographer for a very long time because I started really late. But as a child, I think I was already interested.
I wonder whether it's a photographer thing, or maybe it's a thing that everybody does because we're naturally nosy. But you say you peer into people's windows. I do that. and I worry that one day somebody's going to come out and say, "What are you doing?" I find a window in a house along a street fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. There are stories. And the thing is, just like street photography, you never really know the real story. So it leaves room for the imagination. That's the beauty of it. And the challenge of capturing that moment that's never happened before and will never happen again, there's not a lot of photography genres that can give you that. And I think that's why we get so addicted.
Which is probably an apt word, because I know you are a purist in terms of your street work being candid. And that's become your life passion in terms of street. And we've talked in the past about the setup versus the candid. Now, you're an admirer of one particular photographer, one very well-respected, famous French photographer. But one of his most famous pictures is not all as it seems. Do you mind picking up that story and explaining that? Because I know you have a passion for this photographer.
One picture that was always, when we talk about Robert Doisneau, one of my favorite photographers. I grew up with pictures of by Robert Doisneau on my wall as a teenager, and the calendars and everything. One of his most famous picture was never a street shot. It was the kiss at the Hotel de Ville, right?
Yeah. And
every time we see work by Robert Doisneau, that's the picture that they show. But that was a commissioned photograph. He never wanted, it never was meant to be a candid shot. It was commissioned for a magazine. And so where his candid work is so magnificent. And I saw one of the most beautiful exhibits of his work a couple years ago in France. And his candid work is so moving. And I find it very sad that the picture that we already see when we talk about Robert Doisneau is actually a commissioned work, and where he was such an amazing candid street photographer. So that's kind of a side note. But yes, of course, there will be some that were staged and we don't know, and do we really want to know? It's easier to know when you have the contact sheets.
What makes a moment or a scene worthy of capturing it in terms of street context? When you're walking, I know you're very reactionary. You're good at that. You see things and think, right, must have that. So a lot of it is quick. It's reactionary. It's
quick reaction.
Yeah. But not
that's
all,
the challenge.
But not all of it. Sometimes you'll see a scene, won't you? You think, I'm going to work this a bit.
I'm going to wait for something to happen. If you see a beautiful light, and you're just going to wait for a few minutes or an hour, if you have the time, until somebody worthy of the shot that's really going to give the aesthetic you're looking for, whether it's, you're in Paris and you're looking for someone walking by with a long dark coat and a hat or whatever. Sometimes it never happens. But the point too is to actually not settle for something that's not going to be as good as what you envision. Something even better may come along sometimes. Most of the time, you'll walk away with nothing, but that's okay too. You have to be, if you're a street photographer, you do it for the experience first, the photograph second. If you're not enjoying the journey, you're going to be pretty miserable. It's such a beautiful thing to do, to walk the streets for hours and hours and hours, and experiencing it should be the goal. And then if you have a keeper at the end of the day, that's great. If you don't, it should not be a disappointment, because you learn every time you miss a shot. I always tell my students that, you hear all the time, oh, I just missed that. Oh, I just saw that guy with an umbrella and it looked so good and he was crossing the street and I missed it. I'm like, well, not really. You didn't get the shot, but you saw it. And you saw a special moment, and that's more than most people. And so the learning happens whether you miss it or not. You still learn from it, because it teaches you to see and respond to the beauty of the mundane in the everyday.
How do you? I know that your work is candid, but there will be moments, and particularly when you're making pictures of people, where somebody may object. I know you don't have it too often. I know that from our conversations. But it's a question you will have been asked, and how do you deal with it?
Oh, well, first of all, just don't look like you're doing something wrong. If people see me, I usually already have the shot, so it doesn't really matter at that point. If they see me and said, did you just take my picture? Which has happened a handful of times. I said, yes. Absolutely. I mean, the light is beautiful. You're wearing this amazing hat or whatever it was that attracted me to them. I tell them, and then I show them on the back of my camera, and they're usually very pleased because I always portray people in a good way. I never make fun. I mean, respect is the number one rule. Respect of your subject. Don't portray people in embarrassing situation, in situation of crisis, in situation of ridicule. And we've talked about that. And so I'm never afraid to show the picture I took. I'm pleased when it happens. I don't go to people it's happened a couple of times where I actually followed people. I said, hey, I got this really cool shot of you as a silhouette in the sunset. I would love to send it to you. It's happened. And people are super pleased about it. But if people notice you, just say what you're doing. They're more curious than anything else. They don't know what street photography is for the most part.
You have a nice trick where you will pass somebody and you'll think, oh, I like that. And then you'll cross the road, you'll walk back the other direction and come back again. It's I call it Valerie's lost person trick. Because you must look like you don't know where you're going because you're going backwards and forwards. Tell us about that and how effective that is.
Well, for example, if you're walking at a normal pace down the street and you see someone really interesting inside a cafe, reading a newspaper, whatever it is, well, you can't just stop and get the shot, right? With any sudden move, the person is going to look up. And you don't want that. I don't want eye contact. I want to capture the moment that I saw. And so instead of trying to get it, if I'm walking too fast and I just saw it, I keep on going. And then, yes, I will cross the street so that they don't see me going back and forth, and then cross again. And then I'm ready. I'm going to go slowly. I'm going to have my camera at the right angle without my reflection in the shot. And I won't even stop. I will barely slow down my pace and then get the shot and keep on going. I've photographed people on the beach embracing really close that way within just 50 centimeters by not stopping. So getting the shot from hip level or chest level, depending on where you need the camera to be to get the right angle, whatever it takes, and then keep on going. It's hit or miss, but at least I put all the chances on my side by going back and trying. Sometime the person will be gone, or they'll be looking at their phone and not the newspaper anymore, but you take that chance.
I'm intrigued by shooting from the hip because, and this might surprise you or might not, I don't know, I'm hopeless at it. There must be a method by which to do it. And maybe we'll get a bit tech here as well in terms of aperture and how you work.
Well, I used to shoot without a flip screen. I find now that with the flip screen, shooting from the hip is pretty easy if you have the time to flip the screen. So do that if people are really, like at a market. I was just working with a workshop group in Normandy, and we were at this beautiful, beautiful market. And I told them, put face detection in cameras now. It's so good. Put face detection. So if you're shooting from the hip or you're shooting completely blind even, the camera will find the faces. Just don't forget to turn that off because the metering defaults to the face. But some have found that really, really helpful. Oh. And so, our cameras make it so much easier that we can actually focus our attention on that special moment that we need to use all those functions.
In terms of color or black and white, I know you shoot a bit of color. I've seen your color work, and we've talked about your color work over the last couple of years, but you do prefer black and white. For those that haven't heard you explain the reason why, and I don't think we've asked you for a while, why? Why overall are your projects a festival of black and white?
Well, I like the look of it. I think it conveys an emotion more than color. Color can be very distracting. That's really the reason why I don't shoot as much color. It's often the color is not the subject of the photograph. And if it's not the subject, then it distracts from it. And so that's really the main reason. But sometimes, and I switch back and forth, I make the decision before I press the shutter. And I was just on the beach and in the evening, and this beautiful couple and their reflection, they were walking away, and their reflection in the water at low tide was so beautiful. It was a color shot because the color made the emotion stronger. But more often than not, the color will distract from the subject. And so black and white also removes reality a little bit. So we don't see in black and white. So it's an aesthetic that I like more in certain places than others. Some cities are more black and white than others, but I like it. Color is definitely harder to shoot. I mean, you have so much more to take into consideration to really tell the story, because you always need to know what is the subject. And if you're shooting in color, the color better work with that.
With your workshops, just finally, with your workshops, I'm sure there are questions that are asked continually. You do your workshops around the world, but I'm sure that no matter who's coming and what countries they're from, what nationalities they are, there are probably some questions that are the same, the ones that you expect to be asked.
Well, how to be invisible would be the first one.
Well, you want to get yourself an invisibility cloak for that. When they invent that, I'll be first at the store.
Yeah, actually, it is probably the one thing. It's like, how do you get that close and people don't see you? Because you always get the shot before people look up, or they never even look up. And that comes with practice, and also with knowing that what you're doing matters. And that's really important, because if you're nervous, those vibes will transfer around you. Yes. And people will definitely pick up on that and notice you if you're really, really nervous. I get close, but I'm not in people's faces either. So it's really about being able to capture quickly and move on, not to linger. You can't linger unless you're standing next to leaning on a post and waiting for that beautiful, for someone to walk through that beautiful light. Then yes, you can certainly do you can go fishing that way. I like to just react. Yeah. And you miss a lot. So people don't realize you miss a lot. I miss fewer now because I don't shoot as much. I press the shutter when I know it's most likely going to be a keeper, so I shoot less and I have a higher rate of keepers. But the more you shoot, the more you're going to throw out. You know, when someone said once, out of 100 pictures, throw 99 out, that's pretty accurate in street photography. For someone who shoots, pretty much constantly throughout the day. If you get one keeper out of 100, that's pretty good.
And my thanks to Valérie Jardin for being my guest. She is back, actually, on the Extra Mile. I'll tell you about that a little bit later on. It's the Photo Walk Show. Send your stories, send your pictures, send your thoughts, what photography means to you, to stories@photowalk.show, which is the same address for the monthly challenge, which has stayed the same for September and October, since with the retreat and everything going on, we were, I was a little slower in uploading the assignment pictures on the assignments page. This month, the one word for your assignment, because we're working to one-word assignments this year, the one word is change. Make a picture. This is from Gary Williams, who was a guest on the show a couple of weeks back. Correction again, a month and a bit ago. But Gary Williams set the one-word assignment, and that word is change. Good luck, get your pictures in. 2,500 pixels wide if you can resize them. If you can't, do not worry. I will do the heavy lifting. And, don't put watermarks on it. And please don't put borders around them. And we're looking for one picture that says change. Make sure you send me links to your work, though, so that I can be sure to link to your work from the assignments page, your website or your Instagram, your Vero Substack, since we've been having long conversations about Substack. Make sure you do link to your website, your work, your socials, and I'll do that on the assignments page, and of course on the show pages when I read your letters out as well. A couple of letters then from the mailbag. Then my final guest for today. I'm going to start with Maureen Bond from LA, and I think this is a very relevant mail when you consider today's conversation about making street pictures, although this letter is actually more about making street portraits. So it's of a less candid nature, obviously, and well, it's a discipline, I think. Discipline sounds a bit formal, doesn't it? A discipline, Neil. We're not on the, we're not in gymnastics now. No, what do I mean? Not a discipline, a skill. It takes a lot of courage, I think, to make street portraits. Admittedly, for some more than others. But thank you, Maureen, for your mail on this one, your letter on this one. Dear Neil, I've been meaning to write for a while and finally sat down to do so. Well, I'm pleased you did. I learned about your photo walk show from listening to Jeffrey Sidoris. I will have to thank Jeffrey. I do enjoy the conversations. I sometimes think, I know this is going to sound a bit like a tease. It's one of those things where somebody will say, why did you mention it if you're not going to do it? But I do enjoy my chats with Jeffrey, and we often say, when we're having a Zoom, we should be recording this. There's stuff going on here that's quite interesting. Well, maybe we think that anyway. But yeah, dear Jeffrey. See, Jeffrey is one of the reasons that I and others, and we discussed this on the photo walk retreat in Scotland, have got rather partial and are very keen about Substack. So, but that news about our Substack is to come in a week or two. Anyway, I decided to look you up and give you a listen. My first podcast of yours that I listened to was Find Your 5 Points of Creative Thinking. I went into a tailspin journaling and tried to navigate what I considered would be my 5 points. You still had me thinking, and I thank you for that, but I was hooked immediately and I've joined you as an extra miler. Well, I have to say, Maureen, that's above and beyond. That really is. Thank you. And I genuinely mean that. That's not just the end of a sentence to sound a bit witty or something. No, I genuinely mean that. It's the extra milers that really do keep this podcast going. Those that listen that can't necessarily join in with the extra miler, you keep us going too. Obviously you do. But the extra milers, thank you. Sincerely thank you. Because without you, no, I couldn't do this. It wouldn't be something that I could give even half the amount of time that's invested into this every single week to bring what is, quite a complex, I'm going to call it piece of radio, because that's the world from which I came. So I really do appreciate, Maureen, you showing faith in what I do and becoming an extra miler. I really do. Your most recent show about portraits of strangers had me reminisce about my 100 Strangers project that I did through the Flickr group in 2009 and 10. The experience was something that I'll never forget and can say it definitely improved my confidence on the street and taking portraits of strangers. I've attached 3 images from back then. I still from time to time dabble in street photography, which does include strangers. And I look forward to every Friday in the morning as your show gets me through my commute to work. Are you on the Pinstriped Express, Maureen? Or are you on the expressway? Are you on the highway? Thank you, Neil. P.S. I have a bumper sticker on my car. I think that's answered my question. You see, Maureen, this is what my school reports used to say. Please read question first. Or in your case, read letter first. I have a bumper sticker on my car that says, tell your dog I said hi. So give Barney a squeeze for me. Maureen, I will. The moment he comes back from Grandma's. Because that's where he is today. Maureen Bond. I appreciate that. I had a good look at your work as well. And my word, look at this website. The Ideas Fest that is your website. It's incredible. I'll pop all relevant links on the show page today and go take a look. Take a look at... perhaps I shouldn't just pick a couple out because there's so much to see, but Forgotten, I loved the media and that. And After Curfew, the way you've lit up the cars at night, just fantastic. Doesn't look like there's a soul in sight either. So in a kind of, sort of, we're returning to Mally's thoughts, aren't we, about photographing in the dark alone. But I'll put your pictures on the show page, your street portraits, and I did spy Jay Leno in front of your camera. So I would very much like to have a chat with you as well in the coming weeks on the extra mile. Extra milers are often, the subject of our conversations on the extra show that you get aside this every single week. So Maureen, we should have a chat because there's so much of your work and your skills to chat about. And remember, I was asking you for ideas for specials, he says, turning left at the traffic lights now, which rather took a back seat during the summer and then the retreat weeks. But Harald Kahles from Germany has some ideas which I rather like. Hi, Neil, says Harald. Here's some ideas for specials. Number one, there's 3 of them. Finding ways to discover your why. I think that's always worthy of a special. Actually, number 2, gear. Yes, I know we do not want to talk about it, as it does not matter. Well, is that the feeling that I give off? Because I don't entirely mean it that way. Gear is important. It's just that we don't get very technical. I mean, I love my X100V. I'm very attached to my X100V, and I often talk about why when I'm making these walks. But you are right. It's the tech stuff that gives me a nosebleed, really. But every photographer, says Harald, uses specific gear and does so for a reason. It would be interesting to learn why the photographers use what they do, and perhaps this is connected to their why. You could well be right. And number 3, you very often reference the importance of capturing sound alongside the images. You also mention in a recent episode you use your iPhone. I do, and I do still, to record sound. And you mentioned possibly doing a behind-the-scenes show. This would be very much appreciated. And yes, it's in my solid intentions of making it happen because, it's going to be an extra mile thing that I'm going to do. Whether it becomes something that we do, I think it'll be an introduction more than the whole thing, because it's very hard in introduction to really get in deep and teach sound without spending hours and hours on it. And really, on the retreat, I hope I managed to, certainly with discussion, to go a good in-depth way into how I feel about sound and how I use it. But yes, in the extra mile, I am planning to do something on this. So very, very good ideas. I like them all. Thank you, Harald, in Germany. I'm staying in Germany, actually, sort of, with the letter. Then we sort of pop back to London, as you're about to hear, for the final chat on our show today with a photographer called Wolfgang Strassl, who I was introduced to by Gabriele Matola, who thought I'd be interested in a particular project Wolfgang made on a visit to London, a rather different way to make portraits on the underground. As a photographer, he's fascinated by spaces and environments and how we interact as humans. And I think the following 9 minutes or so of my chat with him really, really does uncover that making portraits doesn't have to be a colour by numbers event. There are many ways to skin a cat. Neil, don't. What? What are you talking about? Don't. Moi? I know you're trying to get a little comment in about you know who. No, not at all. The thought hadn't even occurred, dear other listener. Anyway, I'm really pleased I found Wolfgang's work, and I think this is one of those chats that has a behind-the-scenes light bulb illumination moment. Technically too, because the way he made this project, I think, is beautifully and perfectly simple. See, we're back to simplicity, but so very, very, very effective. Pictures of people on trains. Pictures I'll share, some examples I'll share on the show page today. I'd like to introduce you to Wolfgang Strassl.
This work is how we met, really, in terms of speaking now, because our mutual friend Gabriele Matola mentioned this project to me. The Underground in London is not a place that's unusual to see featured in work, but you embraced it in a different sense, and partly, not fully, I know, but partly because you were cold. There's been many times in London, and especially when I used to work in London a lot, where I thought, I'm a bit chilly, I'll just go down, take an underground ride, that'll warm me up. That's partly what was happening for this photographic project, wasn't it, initially?
Yeah. So one reason, and a very profane one, is indeed I felt it's too cold for my usual street portraits. and both because I hated to stand out there in the cold, and I realized that you don't find any models with this weather to be willing to give you 5 minutes or 10 minutes.
Street portrait, yeah.
Stand in the cold for you. I said, go down, let's see what I can do there. I thought the underground, particularly when you sit in a carriage in the London Underground, first, it's a very iconic space.
Yes, it is.
It hasn't changed from its design significantly over the last 50 years or so. No. So that's quite iconic. People can identify. Most Londoners spend every day of their life a few minutes at least there. So I thought, let's get into this social space and see what I can do, like other photographers have done. So I was experimenting, of course, and when I did sort of these first shots, I realized I was fascinated by the fact that these characters are so diverse. The fascinating thing was also that these diverse characters are sitting next to each other, and you have sort of in this one small space, you have so much diversity, you have so much individuality on the other side. And I found that very fascinating.
Why just the legs, though? Why did you shoot just the legs?
That's again is a practical reason, and probably you could call an artistic reason. The practical one is it was very clear to me when I did these shots. Of course, I did not tell the people that I took a picture of them, because then they would change to be acting naturally. So I had to do it without their knowledge. Consequently, I had to do it without their permission. So there was a very practical, legal, and ethical reasons for me that I couldn't show the face, without, let's say, causing a privacy issue. And then there, of course, was another reason, which I found also interesting, is I've been experimenting because I'm interested in looking at people, staring at people. And I was always wondering, why do I find faces so interesting? What do faces tell us? I sort of concluded or was wondering, maybe faces don't tell us so much about a character, but maybe it's a lot my projection about what I read in your face. So let's say if the faces actually don't tell us so much, let's look below the face. Because I found it interesting that even if you cut off the face, which I needed to cut off, you see so much individuality and so much specific character features below the face in how people sit, in how people are dressed. And you start, at least me, you start again reading, interpreting, imagining what these boots mean, how he holds his hands, how he spreads his legs. What does it tell?
Well, that was quite interesting, actually. A lot of the men their legs were spread, and female passengers felt a bit more guarded. I don't know whether that's something to do with the underground. Obviously, it's to do with attire and what you wear, but equally, it looked like it could be some sort of social messaging going on as well. You know, when you sit on the underground, I know this, certain lines on the underground make me feel very different. You, I think, shot, well, going by the book jacket, they are Jubilee. I know this line very well. They are Jubilee line stations. There were 4 stations in particular. I've travelled through them many, many times. That line feels very different to me than the Northern Line does, say, at the end of the line. I carry myself in a very different sense.
You're right. I think it was still fascinating for me how much diversity and how many stories you would get basically in one carriage on the underground. And I found it was a fascinating picture of London, because I find I'm very impressed about so much diversity with so many people in one space can still create a fairly peaceful, civilized, social body. So I think the portraits are a study in portraiture with the question, do I need the face? Or what do I get if I don't use the face? Then it's also a study a little bit of this social space, because of course they're individual portraits, but actually if you have them in a row, you can imagine, and you are imagining, yes, this is all happening in one carriage, effectively. And so it tells about how people live together in this unbelievable city of London.
How did you, I'm intrigued, how did you shoot it then? Because you said you didn't want to make people aware that you were photographing. It's very difficult, and I've tried this on the Underground, to photograph the person directly in front of you without them getting some kind of idea of what's going on.
Yeah, basically, I shot it with a big camera. At that time, Canon 5D, so it's a fairly large SLR camera. But I used my iPhone as a remote control. Both as a viewfinder and remote control.
That's ingenious. So it was, the camera was balanced on your knee, and you looked like you were just texting or looking at your phone.
Yeah.
I have to ask you just finally, because I was looking through, and I've only seen a few of the characters. The book will have many, many more. I was drawn to the man who was quite sharply dressed. He was well dressed. He had nice pants on, but he had two little rips in them. And there was a degree of humour, really, to somebody being so well-dressed, but so shabby all at the same time.
I should say it's a product of chance. But most things happen by chance. Quite frankly, when I took the picture, I didn't see these holes. You have to imagine I'm sitting there opposite. I'm not looking at the person, and particularly I'm not looking at the person. I'm looking into my iPhone, and I have a very small viewfinder there or screen there, and the underground is rumbling through the tunnels. And I'm sitting there and I'm taking probably 20 to 30 pictures of everybody and hoping that sort of one of them turns out well, is not blurred or whatever. So I felt, this guy is interesting because how he sits, what he wears. Yes, it's a very elegant suit. It's quite shabby. He has yellow socks. Yeah, very typical London city dress. City
boy is what we would call them.
City boy, maybe it should have been red instead of yellow. So I thought, interesting character, a London guy. And only when I looked at it later on the screen, I realized, wow, there's this additional feature which further underpins my initial feeling about it. So it's not, again, I didn't take it because of the holes. They were just there and discovered afterwards.
And my thanks to Wolfgang Strassl for being my guest. One of three today. My thanks also to Valérie and to our Mally as well. And that's it for today. If you can't wait until next Friday and you'd like to walk a little bit further together, then the Extra Mile edition number 109 is waiting for you. It's the Extra Mile is an extra program, and it's part of our Patreon channel, supported by our wonderful community, of which Maureen is one of them. So thank you. Our extra milers each week support the show, and because you go an extra mile for me in supporting us, then supporting me, well, it's us, because it's me and Barnes and the team and the other listener and the sofa. I tell you what, that sofa, the sofa of flattery. And because you support me and go the extra mile, I go the extra mile for you and make an additional show each week. This week, Valérie Jardin returns for an update on the project about the Minnesota State Fair. We talked about this on the show a couple of months ago. Can't believe the months are going by that quickly. But it seems it's a project that has found its natural closure. And today's programme is actually called Closure, the Extra Mile, that is. The first 5 minutes of the show is available for free, so click on the link on the website for the Extra Mile. The link is on photowalk.show, top right-hand corner where it says support the show. Is it the yellowy orange button, Neil? Yes, it is. You read my mind, and you can hear the start of the show, but I'm not sure that'll get you into the chat with Valerie. But the chat that I had with Valerie, it really, well, it's a closure really to the conversation we had about the project that was running and when she felt it might be over. I think that's sometimes the hardest thing about projects is, when does this end? When is it over? Will it ever end? So that's on the extra mile today. PS to the show is to come, but before that we need a play-out song just to make some final frames to think about what's been said today. I know that I often have things of a quite serene nature, but I've had a couple of weeks of lively numbers. I hope you won't mind. Is that okay with you? Oh, go on then, Neil. This is the Satellite Station. That's what the band is called, and the song is called A Road Less Travelled.
Oh, my soul's running on fumes. Can I distill it down until I find the truth? Dig the dirt down to the roots. Have I been walking round in someone else's shoes? So where are you going? Honey, can I catch your eye? It's driving till the sun goes down in the moonlight, washes everything away. 'Cause I don't wanna run anymore. Can we take the road less traveled? We could get lost on the way. We could spend a whole life chasing something that'll never stay. Can we take the road less traveled? There's no rush in getting there. So put down all those expectations, just sink in the ocean air. Which way will we did everything we're meant to do? I put on that suit and wore that tie like a noose. Still the world rang out of tune, and I could never find the notes to make it true. So where are you going? Honey, can I catch your eye? Let's drive until the sun goes down in the moonlight, washes everything away. 'Cause I don't wanna run anymore. Can we take the road less traveled? We could get lost on the way. We could spend a whole life chasing something that'll never stay. Can we take the road less traveled? There's no rush in getting there. So put down all those expectations, just sink in the ocean air. Which way will we do? So where are you going? Honey, can I catch your eye? Let's drive until the sun goes down in the moonlight, washes everything away. Can we take the road less traveled? We could get lost on the way. We could spend a whole life chasing something that'll never stay.
A road less travelled by satellite station. And that's it for this week. I feel, I hear, I could possibly feel it, a Chinook coming. Can you hear that in the background? A Chinook. It's incredible, the vibration, those rotors, which, they're several thousand feet up in the air, not often quite a long way away, but you still hear them. And that's one of those rotors you can feel in your chest, isn't it? Definitely the windows at the house feel it when they come over quite low, as they do sometimes over our house. Barney goes running off. Oh, don't like this. I'm off. I'm going to go and hide under the bed. All right, Barnes, I'll come and join you. Right, let's do a final sketchbook. A picture just to end the show with. I can see the leaves. In fact, if I shoot through this, okay, so I'm going to shoot. Oh, I'm not quite sure it works. I can't get the depth. There's a tree about, 30, 40 meters in front of me. And it's sort of, if you shoot through this gap, even if I put it on a shallow depth of field, I'm not going to be able to do it. I was hoping that it would be like the tree at the end of the avenue. I'll try it. I'll see if it works. 200th shutter speed, f2, 160 ISO, and I don't know. Not sure. That's the beauty about photography, though, isn't it? You can try stuff. Certainly when it's digital, it doesn't cost you a couple of quid at a time. Although, I'm looking forward to doing far more work with my film cameras this coming winter. Right, a few closing thoughts before the PS. My sincere thanks to you if you are or you're about to become an extra miler. We'll keep building this wonderful community of kindness. Bill said earlier on that he feels it's a community of kindness. If Bill says it, it is. A safe place to share our thoughts about this thing we do, photographing and walking. My thanks to Neil Ford, who looks after IT, Andrea Gilpin, who's across Instagram, and Kelly Mitchell, who looks after our Facebook members. Right, a postscript for the show. And I think because we've been talking about, portraits, some of it's of a candid nature, I know, but I'm going to choose one, a PS today, that's relevant to making portraits. And it's from Edward Steichen. I'll link to Edward's work on the show page today, and I love this. I think this perfectly describes portraiture. A portrait is not made in the camera, but on the other side of it.
The Photo Walk is a Loading Zone production.